What this is real time travel. My brain's a little bit mashed on this. It's more than just a philosophical argument, it's potentially the key to time travel. In this video, I'm going to teach you how to travel in time, and you're not going to need a flux capacitor or a flying DeLorean to do it. So recently on another video, and I've linked it up here so that you can see it, I had a comment that I didn't really agree with at the time, but then since I've started thinking about it a little bit more, and I've also watched other videos and researched it, what that comment said was, time does not exist.
There is no spoon.
Okay, so there is no time, there is no spoon. What's going on there? Initially I thought, well, that's absolute nonsense, clearly. And then I started thinking about it a bit more, and it's more than just a philosophical argument. It's potentially the key to time travel. Now, I want to be completely clear on this. So this isn't going to be like Back to the Future or Hot Tub Time Machine or any of the other time travel movies that you've watched before. This is real time travel that happens in a totally different way. So what I want you to do is to grab a piece of paper and a pen, write some notes, because this is going to get a little bit technical, but I do think it's worth studying, because potentially if this can happen, it holds not only the key to time travel, but also to immortality. Now they say that if you reach enlightenment, you can reach nirvana. No, not that sort of nirvana, I'm talking paradise, eternal life, all of the sort of wonderful stuff that you might aspire to. And I do kind of wonder whether this might be a step towards that enlightenment. So, what's the method for travelling in time? I think I've made you wait long enough. So what is this method? How do you actually do it? It doesn't involve any kind of technology, but it does involve thinking in a certain way. So the time travel itself actually happens inside your head. And hold on here, it's not just like meditation and visualization. You do actually travel in time. Do we use an app or a phone? The answer is no. The way that we do this is to use our minds. And it's not just like meditation or visualization and imagining that you're there, because I think you would be a bit upset with me if I led you on for this amount of time and told you that you could travel in time, and all that involves is laying on a bed and going, I think I'm in 1940. It's not like that at all. But it does have certain limitations, and you're only able to travel within your own lifetime. So you're not going to be able to influence other things that you otherwise wouldn't be able to influence throughout your lifetime as it is. So bearing all of this sort of stuff in mind, you can only travel in your own lifetime because we are finite beings. What does this theory suggest? Okay, so here's the interesting thing, and bear with me because when I first heard the theory, I thought it was nonsense too. So you probably will have that first initial reaction. Just go in with an open mind, all right, please. So the way that this works is that there is no past, there is no future, there is only the now, which sounds like a philosophical argument that you can only ever live in this moment right now, and you can only ever influence exactly what you're doing right now. Fine, okay, we kind of get that from a philosophical point of view, because we can't visit the past except for in memory, and the memories are happening now. Therefore, now happens and past doesn't exist. We can't get to the future until we're at the future, at which point that future is now. So now is the only thing that we can influence, it's the only place that we can live, it's the only place that we can experience the future, therefore future doesn't exist and it's only the now. Okay, I'm with you so far from a philosophical point of view at least, but we've got various different arguments about that. When I first heard that, I just thought, well, okay, but how do we ever have any kind of influence? I definitely remember doing the thing that I'm doing now with a view to doing something in the future or getting some sort of reward in the future. What's the point of going to work if you're not going to get a reward in the future? Well, that's because the future is now, and if we don't do something right now in the now, present now, then the future now is going to be affected by it. But if they're all happening at the same time, what I find really interesting is as we start to look into the quantum physics of this, if we're doing something right now, from a quantum physics point of view, potentially, just potentially, there's nothing to say that this isn't the case. So let's go back to the double slit experiment, which I'm sure you're probably aware of if you've been watching my channel for any length of time. For those of you who aren't, I will very briefly explain. The double slit experiment is about particle physics, where if you fire particles through basically a hole in a gate, it will go through and it will clump at the other end and it'll be detected as a clump. If it's a wave, however, it will go through and it will start doing like a wave pattern. So if you've got two slits, then you would expect that wave to interfere with each other and have like an interference pattern. But when you fire one proton at a time or one particle at a time and you put an observation after the slit, then you can actually see them going through as particles, which means that they then clump at the other end. And so then if you stop observing, they then form a wave pattern again. So it's almost like the act of observing something creates it as a thing, which means that instead of having a wave, you have a single definitive path. And what's interesting about that is that that retrograde to a single definitive path rather than a potential load of outcomes only ever happens when it's observed, and it travels back in time, which means that if we start to observe single photons from distant stars billions of years ago, their wave function collapses and then goes back in time billions of years to the very origin of that photon being emitted, and then it starts to become a photon, a single particle. So the wave function collapses and goes back in time. The only way that I think that that might be possible is if time doesn't exist, or time is a wave. There are two different ideas there, but you can't travel faster than light, apparently, which also does kind of melt my brain a bit, because faster implies time. So let's say that there is this quorum of time that we're experiencing right now. It's really hard to explain. So you're experiencing the world at the moment, and if there's something that's happening right now, you can experience it, and that's all lovely and fine. But if you want to go back in time, you'd need to change your focus so that you can focus on and experience that time. Now, in theory, you should be able to switch back in time. What you'd need to do is to align all of your molecules in your brain to start to be able to access that. Now, before you start saying that this is completely impossible, I don't necessarily think it is. I think what you might be able to do is to tap into certain areas of your brain that are able to access those areas. Now, you may have heard of a film called The Butterfly Effect. It starred Ashton Kutcher and Amy Smart, and Ashton Kutcher's character was able to just sort of sit there and meditate and just go back in time and become his younger self.
You are completely relaxed. Think of it like a movie. You can pause, rewind, or slow down.
Could you save the one person that mattered the most?
And then he'd start to do things that would influence his life in various different ways, either for the better or for the worse. And when he did, he would then come back to the world and almost look to everyone else like he's had a seizure. And then there would be like blood dripping out of his nose and all of that sort of stuff. And he'd suddenly get all of these different memories of different timelines coming into his head and just be like, oh yeah, that's what happened after I did whatever thing he did new. And I think that might be one of the ways that you could potentially time travel. Because if the world relies on observation, then it's quite possible that it's the observation of reality that makes your reality. And so something happens, maybe you get a job, or you quit a job, or you take a different turn down a different road, or any of these things. There's sort of seminal moments in your life where things start to change. If that were to happen for you, what would have happened if you'd done something differently? And sometimes this is called a sliding doors moment, after the movie starring Gwyneth Paltrow.
Would things be different if you caught the train instead of missing it? How much would your life change if you were 10 minutes early? Instead of 10 minutes late.
Helen? So what would happen if you did or did not catch that train? What would happen if you did or did not get into that car crash, or get into that taxi at that particular time, or get that job to meet your future wife? All of these moments have happened in your life, but what if they're happening right now? And what if the only reason that you're watching this video with me right now is that that's where your focus is right now? And so we expect today to be followed by tomorrow, and for today to follow yesterday. And so it does. But the only reason that it does is because we expect it. And we don't just expect it on a conscious level, but we expect it on an unconscious level too. So meditation might be one method, and I don't necessarily think that that's one to discount, but there might be a simpler way of doing it, and that's to use drugs. Now, I'm not advocating going off and using drugs, but there are trials at the moment of something called trimethyltryptamine, or TMT. Now this drug is naturally produced in the brain and it's released in fairly small quantities to induce dreamlike states. Those dreamlike states have often been thought of as gateways to other dimensions or other realities. And although your dreams are often really, really weird, they might be a gateway to alternative realities, and not just travelling in time, although that too sometimes, but also entirely different realities. Now I'll get back to that in a different video, and if I have done that video I'm going to link it up here, so let me know down in the comments if you want to see that video. But before we get on to anything else, I just wanted to sort of dwell on TMT a little bit longer. Now although TMT is naturally produced in the brain, it's very, very small quantities. Those quantities go ridiculously high just before you die. Those people who have died and come back, near-death experiences, all of that sort of stuff. Near-death experiences is a little bit of a funny term because technically those people are dead and then they come back. So from a medical point of view, they die and then they come back. They don't issue a death certificate. That would be quite awkward, wouldn't it? Because then they'd need to reverse it. But anyway, I'm just talking off the top of my head now, and that's probably not a great idea for this video. So TMT gets released in large quantities near death, and it leads to some really weird experiences of talking with angels or extraterrestrial beings or this light entity that comes down. Call it God, call it what you will. But I find that that is quite a strange, very important scientific link to say this drug is increased just before you die. These experiences happen. So there are experiments now based on TMT where people are volunteering to have reasonably high doses of TMT in their blood and to keep that level at a fairly high level and then come off it, there's no side effects, and then they report what had happened during that time. So there's no long-term side effects, but certainly there are some effects, and the effects themselves are weird. So anyone who has TMT in their blood will start to experience very trippy psychedelic experiences.
1, 2, 3, innocuous.
Where they might talk to entities, and those entities start to give them information that there is no possible way of them knowing in the first place. So it might be advanced mathematics that hasn't ever been invented, it might be geometry that's never been invented, or scientific theories that have never been invented before. These sorts of things, although they may seem very, very strange, is incredibly common, and scientists are now starting to take it very seriously as what's actually going on here. We know something is happening. It's not speculation anymore. This is definitely happening. What is it? And why? Now, linking this back to time travel, this might be a way of unlocking our abilities or brain power or consciousness or attention or whatever it is that's keeping us in this now so that we can start to expand. And maybe this is one of the reasons why DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency in America, are so interested in TMT and all of the meditation and psychic and consciousness based technologies that were so prevalent and patented during the Cold War. So if you want to time travel, maybe it's just about putting your focus in a certain area to then collapse the wave function of the universe around you. I just wanted to also mention that when people are starting to look at electrons and photons and all of those different things, it doesn't seem to matter where they look, they still find it there. Now, when we draw an atom, we draw something that looks a bit like this. Now, this is an atom drawing which indicates that there are a certain number of electrons that are orbiting in a fairly fixed pattern. That's not how an electron works. It's more like a cloud around that nucleus, where the electron could be pretty much anywhere in that cloud. And so the number of electrons around it is almost like an increase in the probability of finding it in that sort of area. So we know that there are a certain number of electrons, and certainly the maths seems to work out well. That's how it all looks. But if we look at 2 electrons and we find 2 electrons, we then can't find any more. But it seems to be that it doesn't matter where we look, we will find it wherever we look. It's a bit like the Schrodinger's cat equation. And so if that's the case, I find it strange that those electrons can collapse from a wave into a particle, and then as we start looking deeper into that particle, especially to subatomic particles like quarks, they become waves again until we start to observe them, and then they become subatomic particles. And then presumably, if we kept on doing that all the way down, it would still be resonance and waves. So if those waves are happening all at the same time, and the particles are essentially happening wherever we look at the same time, and there's also a lot of physicists at the moment who are suggesting that maybe the electron that we're seeing over here is the same one as the one over there, because they're always identical. It might be the same electron. And this isn't a fringe theory. Lots of eminent scientists are now suggesting that electrons are one electron. Every electron is the same electron. And if that happens, how can it be over there and over here at the same time? Well, maybe time doesn't exist. Maybe it's everywhere at the same time because time is irrelevant. And if time's irrelevant, potentially we can travel in it. How do we do that? Well, if we do the same equation to work out how do we observe this electron and that electron, we observe it. And by observing it, we just pick, this is the one that we're observing, that's the one that we're going with right now, therefore we see it right now. And then if we do the same with a macro scale where we just go, okay, well this is the whole of reality, I'm viewing this reality right now, that's what you're going to see. So now the question is, how do we actually time travel? Well, yes, dreaming, potentially. You could use lucid dreaming techniques, and I have done a video on lucid dreaming in the past. We can also do meditation. We can also use a Kozyrev mirror, which I've done a video on in the past. The word past has new meaning now. Or we could use trimethyltryptamine, which I wouldn't recommend grabbing your hands on too much of that stuff because potentially it could be harmful. I don't know how to get hold of that, and I'm certainly not advocating drug use. I don't know of any side effects, however, there probably will be some. So if you can get your hands on some, be really, really careful whether or not you use it. I'm not advocating it at all. Now, of course, there is another theory that we live in a simulation, and if you want to find out more about that, I've put a video just there for you. So let me know what you think down in the comments. If you want to see this sort of video before everybody else, have a look down in the description where you can join this channel for only $1.99 a month. I'm going to be back next time with some more magical awesomeness. In the meantime, click that like button, subscribe and ding that bell, and until next time, as always,
Stay magical.